Okay, so one important aspect of a presentation is the visual aid. Not every speaker and every occasion will use a visual aid, but most often they will. We're going to be working with digital visual aids because we live in a technological age, and generally that's the type of visual aids we'll be using in the corporate world or in an academic setting, etc., etc. So, this is How to Create a Good Digital Visual Aid by me, Mary Harrison. So, I set up this slideshow to be not only informational for you, but also an example for you. So, you should have a piece of paper in front of you, and you should have written, if you haven't already, write it now, how to create a good digital visual aid at the top of your paper, because that is exactly the information you're going to learn from this presentation. I want you to take notes, not on just what the slides say. If you just listen to this video or not listen to it, as it were, and just copy down whatever words are on the screen, that's not going to be a giant use to you later when you are creating your own presentation. And yes, you will be presenting before the class with your own digital visual aid, so it's important that you know how to do it right. You will be assessed over that. So make sure you're taking notes on not just the words on the screen, but what I say, okay? So if you need to pause the video to write down something that you heard, please do that as needed, as always. So first let's talk about the title page. That's the page that I just left. This is the title page, okay? So let's talk about what you should do with your title page. Your title page should be the first slide of your presentation, obviously, okay? It should have a name, the name of the presentation. So you should name your presentation in a way that tells your audience what topic you're going to be presenting on. It should tip them off, okay? If you have a totally crazy creative name for it that doesn't really say much about what you're going to be presenting, that's bad. Don't do that, okay? So you should title your presentation, and you should include the presenter's name, first and last, which would be you, your name. So let's take a look again at the example. Let's back it up. How to create a good digital visual aid. That's very straightforward. Now my presentation here is a how-to, so it makes sense that I would word it in this way. But you might be presenting something totally different. And so make sure that your title is creative. So for example, if you're presenting about a book, you don't want to just title your presentation the name of the book, okay? You want it to be, it might include the title of the book, but it should be a creative title that you came up with yourself. Okay, if maybe you're presenting about some research that you conducted on a certain topic, okay? So you don't want to rip your title from maybe the title of an article that you researched for your research project. No, that's the title that somebody else wrote. You're going to want to design your own title that does tell your reader, or sorry, your audience, what you conducted your research about and what you're about to teach them about. And notice how my name is capitalized, as always. It's a proper name, and so is yours, so always capitalize it. So that's about the title page. Let's move on to learn about font. Font meaning the type, the style that you are going to present your information in. It should be a legible style that you select. Please don't select some kind of fancy script that looks like cursive or is very curvy. That's going to be very difficult for your audience to see and read easily. The more time that they have to spend decoding or reading whatever you have up there, the less that they are paying attention to you. And you don't want your presentation, your digital visual aid, to distract from you at all. Okay, so a very straightforward, very easy to read font style is preferable. A couple, if you're struggling, you can always ask me or ask your neighbor for advice. I always go with Arial or Times New Roman because those are just very easy fonts for everybody to read. But there are more out there that would work. Just make sure that it's extremely easy to read, okay, and it's not fancy in any way, okay. Again, even if it's maybe easy to read, but it's very stylized, that is going to distract from you, the presenter, and you never want to distract from you, okay? Your aid should be just that, something that supports and aids you. You also want your font color to be highly contrasted to the background. So you may have noticed, I always use black and white, okay? You can't get more contrasted than black and white. I prefer a white background with black text, and that is because it is projected onto a white screen. And so the black font is going to pop out the most on that sort of screen and using that sort of background. You do not have to use black and white. That's my preference, but I want it to be contrasted enough that it's very easy, again, for your audience to read. If you use like yellow on white, that would be a very bad choice because there's not enough contrast and it's hard to read. Or if you use one shade of red for your background and a darker shade of red for the font, it's going to be very hard to tell those apart and read it from far away. So always be keeping that in mind. Your font size should be large as possible. 30-point font or bigger would be preferable, okay? It's very rare that I go below 30-point font, and I almost never do. And I would say that you are never going to for the purposes of this assignment. You want a large font. And by the way, speaking of font sizes, you'll notice that my headings up here are always larger than the font in the body of it. And that's a good idea too, okay? Because it tells your audience that this is the big topic that you're covering with all of these bullet points. So that's another good tip to keep in mind. Make your heading sizes larger than the rest of your content. Let's talk about images, pictures. First of all, images should be high quality, okay? And I'll show you by example what I mean by that in a moment. And they should be relevant. Now listen up if you don't know what I mean by relevant. Relevant means it should be very directly related to whatever you're saying, okay? You don't want an image that really doesn't have a very clear connection with what you're saying, because again, that's going to distract your audience. They're going to be scrunching up their faces looking at the picture because they'll be thinking, what does this have to do with what they're saying? And the more time they spend trying to figure that out, the less they're actually listening to you and they're missing your content, okay? So, because your English teacher is hilarious, she picked this example. So this is a picture of Bigfoot, okay? It's a famous picture of Bigfoot. And it's famously a fuzzy image, okay? Which is kind of the joke, right? Is Bigfoot real? Is this image is so pixelated and unfocused that it's hard to tell if that is a real animal or somebody in a costume. So this is what I mean by high quality. Sometimes somebody will find a high quality image, but they'll put it in a presentation and they will expand it, by clicking and dragging to make it bigger so much that it looks like this when they're done, and it looks very fuzzy. You don't want that, okay? You want the picture to be in focus and high quality, and you want it to be relevant and directly relate to whatever you're talking about. So obviously this presentation has nothing to do with Bigfoot, and this is a fuzzy picture, so this one gets the X. This would be a bad example of an image to include in a presentation. So it's okay to use images, and I don't want to scare you away from it, but I want you to be very picky about the images that you choose. Make sure that they really have to do with your presentation. Images can be great in a presentation. They can be engaging. They can be good. They can be a good springboard for you to remember what you want to talk about, just like these bullet points are. And people like to look at pictures, okay? Just make sure that they are high quality and relevant. Now let's talk about your slide design. Each slide should stick to one topic, just like I've been doing in this presentation, okay? If you include lots of different topics on one slide, it's going to be confusing and hard to follow. So anytime you're moving on to the next topic, just create a new slide. And sometimes, if you have so much information on one topic, you might have more than one slide that cover all under the same topic. That's okay. What you don't want is one slide with lots of different topics in it. Each slide should have few bullet points, okay? And you've noticed so far in this presentation that I only have a few bullet points on each slide, and that's with purpose, okay? The eye gets overwhelmed if you have 8 to 10 different bullet points on a slide. You lose your audience very quickly on that. And again, the more busyness that you have up on the presentation behind you, the more busy your audience will be looking at it instead of looking at you and listening to you. And speaking of bullet points, each one should have very few words. In fact, I'm going to give you a number right now that I want you to take down in your notes. Each bullet point should have 8 or fewer words. You should never have more than 8 words on a bullet point. Okay, so avoid writing full sentences is what this means, and you can write that in your notes as well. You shouldn't be writing full sentences. You certainly should not be writing full paragraphs on your slides, okay? So each slide should have very few bullet points, each bullet point with very few words. And finally, bullet points should appear as they are discussed, just like I've been doing. And you can do that. I'm going to show you right now, since that is the end of my slideshow presentation. If you go up to Insert, Animation, okay, and you click on this text box, oops, and click by paragraph, then each bullet point is going to appear as you click. So when you're presenting, you will still have to be clicking ahead through your slideshow on some device, probably on the keyboard of the computer itself by arrowing forward, which I will show you before you present. So with each click of the mouse or each time you tap on that arrow key, it will make a new bullet point appear. Reason for that, okay? Again, your audience's eye is going to go to whatever has just appeared. So when I first went to this slide, I was talking about images. There's my dog. Then I went forward to slides. So my audience knew that I was going to be talking about slide design. Oh, good Lord, chomp chomp. I am so sorry about that. So when I moved to this slide, it showed my audience that I was now going to be evaluating slides. I'm moving to a new topic. And then when I hit the button, okay, then they can read this one line, each sticks to one topic, and they know that I'm going to be talking about that for a while until I arrow forward to indicate to them that I'm going to be talking now about the next topic, and then the next, and then the next. And then that way, I always am directing my audience's attention at whatever precise piece of information I want them to be thinking about at that moment. So there in a nutshell is how to design a good digital visual aid. And bonus material, my dog going absolutely crazy because my mail was just delivered. Let me know if you have any questions, and please rewind and rewatch any part that you need to in order to complete your notes page. Use that notes page and reference that as you are designing your own digital visual aid.